A very good morning to all of you. I hope you all are doing well. Welcome back to your economics class after a long time with your economics teacher Lakshmi Vyas. Today we are going to start a new chapter from the macroeconomics part. Yes, this is chapter 12. The name of the chapter is Theory of Income and Employment. It's a big chapter, but still some part of this chapter has been removed in your reduced syllabus for ISC 2021. But still we will complete this chapter in two parts. This is part 1, and here in this part we will learn some basic parts of this chapter. So let's see what are the parts. Under our area of discussion, we will start our discussion with aggregate demand, which basically completes the entire chapter, under which the very first is components of aggregate demand, out of which we will learn about each and every component separately. We'll start with the consumption function, which will show the relation between consumption and income, its properties and diagram. Then we will move to savings function, which is again the relation between savings and income, which is aggregate 1, and the relationship between propensity to consume and propensity to save. That means the relation between savings function and consumption function will be discussed. So let's start our chapter with the very first subtopic, aggregate demand. Aggregate demand, as the name suggests, aggregate means total. So aggregate demand is the total amount of all the goods and the services which are demanded in an economy. Yes, in place of goods and services you can write the commodity word as well, because commodity means goods as well as services. So aggregate demand means the total demand of all the goods and all the services in one particular economy. Here basically aggregate demand is ex ante, that means beforehand. We know that ex ante and ex post are two types of demand. We have learned about this in our basic demand chapter. Ex ante demand means the amount of goods and services which the buyers are willing to purchase. Yes, the word willing is very important here. It is desired or planned demand. On the other hand, ex post demand, and that ex post demand is the amount of goods that the buyers actually purchase. So the word actually purchase is important in ex post. But here in this chapter we are learning about aggregate demand, and that aggregate demand is ex ante. That means that is beforehand. What are the components? So the total desire of spending on different goods and different services by the entire economy can be well understood with the help of its components. So let's see the components. What are the main components? Here you can see that 4 main components of aggregate demand or aggregate expenditure is given here. The very first is household consumption expenditure. See children, we have already learned about 4 basic entities in class 11. 4 basic economic entities are: number 1, consumers, that means household; number 2 is firms; number 3 is government; and number 4 is rest of the world. Similarly, the 4 components of aggregate demand are also coming from those 4 basic entities. The first one is household consumption expenditure. The second one is investment expenditure, that will come from the firms. The third one is government expenditure, which will come obviously from the government portion. And the last one is net export. Net export means the difference between export and import. Export minus import is net export. So when I add all these 4, C plus I plus G plus X minus M, what I get is aggregate demand or effective demand, or desired demand. Okay, so here we learned about 4 basic components of aggregate demand. Now, as I told you all, aggregate demand is ex ante. Effective demand is the total amount of goods and services that that people actually buy in the economy, and that is an ex post concept. Desired expenditure may not be equal to actual expenditure, either in total or in any component of it. If the firm produces a particular quantity of a commodity in anticipation of a large demand, but actual demand turns out a less, there will be unintended, unsold stock of goods. And this will lead to increase in the inventory investment. So in that case, actual expenditure will be more than the desired investment. So actual spending will be more than desired spending, and actual spending equals planned spending only at equilibrium. We will discuss the equilibrium later on. Here, one more point you need to learn, and that is about closed economy. When we discussed Keynesian theory of income and employment, we consider a closed economy model. Closed economy means no import, no export. Closed means there is no rest of the world relation. So in that case, it will become C plus I plus G. Plus, if we do not take government into consideration, into the account of expenditure, then it becomes C plus I. So a closed economy without government will have an aggregate demand equal to C plus I. G will not be there because government is not there. X minus M will not be there because rest of the world is not there. It's a closed economy. If only closed economy mentioned with government, then G will be included. If there is no government, then G will also not be included. So in that way, aggregate demand can be changed depending upon whether we are including the government or not. In case of open economy, this is the scenario: A equal to C plus I plus G plus X minus M. I hope everyone understood this. Moving to the next part. Among these four, we will discuss the very first, household consumption expenditure. So for that, we will learn about consumption function. Let's see. Consumption function. As we have done demand function, supply function, cost function, similarly we have a consumption function which mathematically shows the functional relationship between desired consumption expenditure and income. Yes, what is the relation between income and consumption? That is being shown by consumption function. If you want to see the mathematical symbolic form, it is a straight line equation, capital C equal to A plus small c into capital Y, where this capital C represents the aggregate consumption, capital Y is nothing but income, and the small c is marginal propensity to consume. What about this small a? This small a is autonomous consumption, which will be there when y is 0. That means when income is 0, then also we consume something, and that something is nothing but autonomous consumption. So here you can understand it's a straight line equation, so consumption function will be a straight line curve. Since it is having a positive intercept, it will be upward rising. And this small c, which we will discuss in the last part of this slide itself, marginal propensity to consume. What is this? It is the simple ratio of change in consumption to change in income. Yes, when income changes, suppose income changes by 10%, then out of that 10% change in income, what is the change in consumption? That is being understood by MPC. Similarly, what is APC? APC is average propensity to consume, which simply refers the proportion of income devoted to consumption. Like if your income is 100 rupees and you are consuming 60 rupees out of that, then APC is 60 by 100, that means 0.6. That means what? 60% of the income is devoted to consumption. So basically this is nothing but a simple proportion of income which we spend on consumption. Consumption function, from that we get two terms, one is APC, one is MPC. MPC is the slope of consumption function, and both APC and MPC lies between 0 and 1. All these we will learn in the next slide, which is the properties of consumption function. Let's see. properties of consumption function is mentioned here. For 3 marks long, short question, you can write these points itself. The very first property is consumption curve slopes upward. See here in the diagram, you can see that on x-axis we are writing income, which is y. On y-axis we are showing the consumption expenditure. This y line is a 90-degree line because we assume that as income increases, the consumption also increases. And secondly, it is a 45-degree line because it passes exactly the midway. The axis is always 90 degrees, so it's midway of that. The very first one is consumption line is upward rising. We all know that when our income will increase, basically our consumption will also increase. So when income increases, consumption also increases. And the second line is also important. When income is zero, then there is some consumption called autonomous consumption. That means when income level is zero, then also we consume something which is called autonomous consumption. In the diagram, point A, which is a positive intercept on the y-axis, vertical axis, is reflecting what we are consuming with zero income. So consumption curve starts from a positive intercept on y-axis. Second one, slope of consumption line. Slope of consumption line is MPC, marginal propensity to consume. And this MPC lies between 0 and 1. It is more than 0 and less than 1. Either we can fully spend the entire change in income on consumption, which will give us MPC 1, or we will not spend at all on the consumption with change in income at all. So that case it will be 0. So usually extreme values are excluded and it lies between 0 and 1. So if you are doing a numerical, children, make sure your MPC value is between 0 and 1. It should not be more than 1 or it should not be negative as well. So in that case you have to be very careful. The last property is APC decreases with increase in income. Yes, what is this APC? Average propensity to consume. When your income increases, then consumption increases, but you will not spend in the same proportion. Obviously, if your income gets double, you will not going to double your consumption. You will increase your consumption, but not exactly by the same amount. Previously, as I have given you example, your income was 100, consumption was 60. So if your income gets doubled from 100 to 200, we usually do not spend 120, because if 60 is okay, then we can increase it to 70, 80 or 100, but not 120. So we can say that the proportion of income spent on consumption usually decreases with increase in income. That means APC decreases with increase in income. So this is what you need to learn from consumption function. The definition of APC and MPC with their values and numericals also. We will do the numericals of this chapter in our second video after completion of some of the important theories in this first part. Now moving to the next part, savings function. What is saving? After consumption, whatever is left out of income is saving. So basically saving S is equal to Y minus C, income minus consumption. After consuming, whatever is left, what is called saving. So savings function is also a mathematical function which shows the relation between saving and income. When your income increases, will you save more? Yes. So in saving function is also upward rising, having a positive relation with income. Income increases, savings also increases. Mathematically, you can see the relation S equal to minus A. Why this negative? Because if we are having no income, then also we are consuming. That means what? We are dis-saving at that point. So savings is negative. Starts with a negative intercept on the vertical axis. So S equal to minus A plus 1 minus C into Y. 1 minus C is 1 minus MPC. This is MPS. What is that MPS? MPS is the marginal propensity to save, which simply says the ratio of change in saving to change in income. If your income is changing, what is the change in saving due to that change in income? And that is being done by MPS. Just like MPC, MPS also lies between 0 and 1. Because when your income increases, either you can save the entire part or you can consume the entire part. That means it is also lying between 0 and 1, just simply like MPC. Again, APS is the average propensity to save. Average propensity to save is the ratio or the proportion of income devoted to saving. Yes, as I have given you the simple example previously, your income is 100, you are consuming 60 rupees. So, what are you saving? 40 rupees. So, in that case, your APS means average propensity to save is 40 by 100. That is 0.4. So, in that way, you can calculate the proportion of income devoted to saving as APS. So, this is what you need to learn from savings function. Moving to the property and diagram of saving function. Yes, again the 3 points of properties of saving function is there. Saving line slopes upward, indicating higher income leads to higher saving. When your income increases, obviously we will save more. At break-even point, saving is 0. What is this break-even point? Break-even point is that point where we consume exactly equal to our income. In the diagram, point G is called break-even point. Our consumption line is intersecting the income line. So, suppose if your income is 100 and you are consuming the entire 100, then at that point, what will be your saving? Nothing. So, in the diagram also you can see that at point G, your income and consumption are equal. So, your saving is Y0. Is intersecting at Y0, that means your savings is intersecting the horizontal line, that means 0 saving. Before Y0 level of income, your consumption line is above your income line. That means you are consuming more than your income. That is why saving line starts with a negative portion, which is called dis-saving. And after Y0, you can see like Y2 point, where A is the level of income and B is the level of consumption. That means consumption is less and income is more. That indicates that you will have some positive saving because you are consuming less than your income. So, saving line is above the horizontal axis, that means in the positive direction. And in that way, we can say that our saving line is positively sloped, which indicates the higher level of income leads to higher saving. Where point G is called break-even point, and at that break-even point, your income and your income and consumption are equal and saving is 0. Similarly, just like consumption function, saving function also have a slope which is MPS. Again, MPS also lies between 0 and 1. And APS increases with increase in income. As I told you, when our income increases, we do not spend more proportion of increased income on consumption, rather we save more. So in such a situation, we can say that increase in income leads to increase in APS, which was opposite with APC. APC usually decreases with increase in income, and APS usually increases with increase in income. Okay, so these are the 3 points. Again, one question can come: how will you derive saving function from consumption function, or how will you derive saving curve from consumption curve? This diagram simply shows that how to derive a saving function from a consumption function. The upper panel of the diagram is the same which we have done in case of consumption function, and using this upper panel only, we have got 3 points y1, y2 and y3 on the lower panel. Joining these 3 gives us the saving function. So in that way you can write this answer also, how to derive a saving function from a consumption function. Mathematically also you can show that y equal to C plus S, means income is equal to consumption plus savings. So savings is equal to income minus consumption. S equal to y minus C. If you substitute the value of C function, which we have done in mathematical part, a plus small c into y, and just simplify it in using algebraic expressions, then you can get the value of consumption saving function, which is minus a plus 1 minus c into y. So in that way you can derive a saving function from the consumption function. Moving to the last part of today's class, relationship between these propensity to consume and propensity to save. What is the relation between savings function and consumption function? The two bullets which I have given here, MPC plus MPS is equal to 1 and APC plus APS is equal to 1. In our live session I will give the full derivation of the two, but here I can discuss this with you all. MPC is what? Delta C by delta Y plus MPS is equal to delta S by delta Y. So what we are getting in the left hand side is delta C plus delta Y, delta C plus by delta Y plus delta S by delta Y. If I take the LCM delta Y, the numerator will become delta C plus delta S. Change in consumption plus change in saving. What is this change in consumption plus change in saving? We all know that consumption plus savings is equal to income. So change in consumption plus change in savings is nothing but change in income. So delta Y upon delta Y will get cancelled out, and what we will get is 1. And hence we can prove that delta C plus delta is MPC plus MPS is equal to 1. In the same way, just simply putting the value of APC and APS, which is the formula, you can simplify that and get it equal to 1. You can start it from the lower part, reverse manner as well. We all know C plus S equal to Y. So C plus S whole divided by Y is equal to Y divided by Y. That means we are dividing both sides by Y. C by Y plus S by Y is equal to Y by Y. C by Y is APC, S by Y is APS, and Y by Y is 1. So APC plus APS is equal to 1. Using these relations, you can do a lot of numericals. Here I have given you one example table where the income increases from 1000 to 1100 rupees. And two corresponding consumption values are given, 900 and 980. So by subtracting 1000 minus 900, you can get the saving value as 100 in the first case and 120 in the second case. What is APC? C by Y, 900 by 1000, 0.9, 980 by 1100, 0.89. So simply dividing C by Y is APC, and MPC is delta C by delta Y. What is delta C? 980 minus 900, which is 80, and 1100 minus 1000 is 100. So 80 by 100 is 0.8. You will get the value of MPC for the second case, because marginal values we cannot calculate for the first value. Marginal means change, and change occurred at the second step. So only for the second value we will get the marginal values. Now, till here, if the values can be calculated, using the relation between APC and APS, we can get the value of APS. APC is 0.9, then APS is 1 minus 0.9, which is 0.1. When APC is 0.89, then 1 minus 0.89 is 0.11, that is APS. Again, MPC and MPS is 0.8, so MPS is 1 minus 0.8 is equal to 0.2. So these relations are very important, children. You can do the numericals using these relations as well. Simply keep in your mind that if APC is given, you can calculate APS simply by subtracting from 1. Again the same relation, if MPS is given, you can calculate MPC, which is 1 minus MPS. So these relationships are important for numericals as well as for theory portions. You must know the relation between the income, the consumption function, and saving function. Today we will not move to the next portions of this chapter. We'll continue this chapter in our next video with investment function, equilibrium of uh, employment and income, diagrams, and numericals. This was it for today's class. We'll complete this chapter in the second video, which will be there in the next week's class. So by that time, you need to write the notes, prepare the theory, go through the book once at least, and complete your assignments, which is given in your classroom app. Clear all your doubts in the live sessions, which we'll have soon from tomorrow onwards. And more importantly, take a good care of yourself and family in this bad time. Thank you so much, children, for being here. Stay healthy, stay safe.